Well, after 3 years of ownership of the first generation MGZSEV here in Australia, I thought it was about time we done an ownership update. Now look, we've been using this vehicle for the last 3 years. We bought it in November 2021. Around town, we've also been going on regional road trips around Queensland. We've took it camping, all loaded up. And we've also done a Brisbane to Sydney 2,000 kilometre round trip. So it's time to give you guys an update on what we think of the car. So there's too much to get through in one video, so I'm going to split this into a 3-part video series. So video 1 today is going to be looking at the exterior of the car and what we've found good and not so good about it, and how it's held up over the Aussie roads over the last 3 years. This video is brought to you by Regen EV Charging Install, Australia's residential and commercial EVSE installation specialists, and Oz DIY Electric Vehicles, the car conversion experts, and Crawford Photography, high quality landscape photography at an affordable price. Links to these sponsors are in the show notes. So welcome to Electric Car Australia, the Aussie genuine EV channel for the real world. My name's Greg, and today, as I mentioned, we're in video 1 of a 3-part series on our ownership of the MGZSEV first generation. And I've got my notebook here to make sure I don't forget anything, because there's quite a lot to go through. And today we're going to have a look at the external or the exterior of the car. But before we get into that, just a reminder of what this car is. So it's, as I said, the first generation. Now, we picked this car up here in Brisbane in November 2020. We ordered it in July 2020, so there was a bit of a wait. And those waits, by the way, are still continuing with EVs. So a lot of the brands, if you're ordering them brand new now in late 2023, you're still needing to wait for those. But what I'd like to remind everyone is this car is actually a 2017 model. So it was released overseas back in 2017. So it's pretty old tech these days. So as you're watching these 3 videos, just keep that in mind. So 3 years ago we bought it. We've got about 38,000 kilometres on it now, so that's not a lot of kilometres. COVID actually slowed us right down with that. We would normally have done a lot more travelling, but with COVID obviously we couldn't travel, and then I changed jobs, and I've got quite a busy job now which takes up a lot more time than my previous role, so we haven't used the car as much, but we've got 38,000 on it, so that gives us a pretty good idea. Now on pricing, we paid 44,000 drive away for this car when we bought it. Now these cars are bringing around 35,000 low kilometre good condition ones, so that gives you a bit of an idea if you're in the used market. Now car sales, for some reason, if you just jump on and you put in MGZSEV, it'll give you the price range between 23,500 and 25,500, but you can't find any vehicles for sale for that, so just keep that in mind as well. I don't know what that's all about. So the current models of this car, so if you buy the 2nd generation of this car, these will set you back about 45,000 drive away, up to about 52,000 for the top of the range large battery. Now they're not direct comparisons to this car, and we'll talk about some of the differences that this first model or first generation had compared to the new ones, but it gives you a rough idea. The price hasn't actually gone up. There's a few less features in the Generation 2 $45,000 one. It doesn't have a sunroof and that sort of stuff, but it's got a larger battery than this car and a few bits and pieces. So I guess long story short, in about 3 years, the price is still around the same for slightly less features. So talking about those different models, this was an Essence model, so a ZSEV Essence, and that was the only model that was brought to Australia back in 2020. So let's have a look, just a 360 degree around the vehicle. Now look, these aren't anything spectacular. There is a petrol model, so they're identical to the petrol model, the look and feel. There's a couple of little things that I'll show you that discern them or separate them from the petrol model. You wouldn't call them the most stylish vehicle, but look, they're practical and they do the job, and that's exactly what we've found over the 3 years that we've owned it. So we'll start off on the back here. So as I mentioned, unremarkable. There's nothing exciting or fancy about this. But starting at the top, we've got a shark fin aerial. Now look, that's been great. There's no wind noise, it's nice and sturdy. There's been no leaks or anything, so that's great. We've got the eye level brake light. Now there's been no blown bulbs or any issues with that. The same as the tail lights. There's no leaking, there's no condensation, which is good. Some new cars, after a year or two, you're getting condensation, so we've had absolutely no problems there. They are incandescent bulbs, as is all the lights in this car. Rear wiper, which some people don't like, but I think a very practical, handy piece of kit, especially in Australia with our ordinary roads and dust and that sort of stuff. It is starting to slightly whiten a little bit. Now this car hasn't had a lot of sun, so that's something I'll be keeping an eye on. The Australian summer is obviously pretty harsh, but the washer's working well, the wiper's working well, no problems there. That's how you open it. So that's the lift up button there, no problems there. The badging, so that's one of the ways you can tell it's a ZSEV, is obviously it's got the EV there, and also the wheels. We'll have a look at those shortly. This was an extra piece of trim. Now some people don't like the chrome trims, but I actually had that put on, or I put that on myself as an accessory. At first I didn't like it. I'll put a link above to a separate video I'd done on accessories for the vehicle, and in that video I mentioned it looks a bit like a moustache, and I didn't really like it, but it has grown on me and I don't mind it now. But that's an extra. Obviously reflectors and stuff, so all this stuff, yeah, reasonably light duty, but it does the job. So down here we've got a little camera down there. Now the resolution on the camera is pretty average, but it does the job just for reversing up to things. The paintwork on the bumper bar has been okay. We've tried to look after it, haven't knocked it around, but yeah, the paint is held up pretty well there. And you'll notice there's no tow bar, which I'll talk about in one of my other videos, which is disappointing because I would like to be able to tow a small trailer or a light camper trailer, but this Generation 1 could not have a tow bar, unlike the Gen 2, which does have a tow rating of 500 kilos braked, and also the Atto 3, which is probably the most compared vehicle with this one. They also have a 500 kilo tow rating. So that's pretty much it for the rear end. No problems at all at this end of the vehicle. So let's run up the side of the car and see what we think. So again, unremarkable. The glass is a bit of an issue with these cars, and we'll cover that in more detail in one of the other videos. The vehicle tinted, if you get a second-hand used model and it doesn't have tinting. It's got a sort of wrap on here, and look, that's held up okay. We haven't had any problems with that. You'll notice I've put a sun visor on there, and this one is missing. So unfortunately the adhesive didn't stick very well to that, and unfortunately I was a bit slack and didn't get that fixed up. I got some new double-sided tape and we lost that one. So I will get some more, because the glass is not that fantastic. It does let a bit of heat in. I found it really useful to have these. It just provides that little bit of extra protection from the sun. And of course, obviously in the Australian subtropical storms here in Queensland, you don't get the rain in the car. Look, moving down the door handles, now look, they're all plastic. Obviously they're a little bit light duty, but the kids have been yanking on these thousands of times over the last 3 years, haven't broken any. So look, they do the job. They do feel a little bit plasticky, but no brakes or anything. Same with the driver's door, it obviously gets a lot of use. The little button there to unlock the door, that's all been working, no problem. This mirror intermittently doesn't fold in, so look, that could be fixed under warranty, but look, I'm not really too worried about that. So when you lock the car, it's supposed to fold in, and I'd say 95% of the time it does. Occasionally it doesn't. The mirrors have been scuffed a little bit. I mentioned the paint. This one's not too bad. The other one's got a bit of scuffing on it, but it hasn't broken through the paint, so that's okay. And this was our first stone chip. I don't know whether you guys can see that there. We got that about 2 weeks after we got the car. So look, that's been there the whole 3 years, never rusted. These cars are galvanised. There was a little bit of argument in some forums around whether the MGs were galvanised body panels and chassis, etc. I believe they are. There's two different types of galvanising. There's a cheaper sort of version and a more expensive hot dip galvanised. These are the cheaper version, but to me that proves it's okay. Like I said, we live in Brisbane, which is a coastal city. No rust there, and there's no rust up underneath it or anything that we've found. So to move a little bit lower here, these plastic trims, they're all still in good condition. I put a bit of polish on those, so that's what that white thing is. I should have actually used Armor All or something. So they're all still in good nick. If you can see under the wheel arch there, you know, this is all still good. There's no plastic clips or anything broken. We've had this off-road. It's been on bush roads, corrugations and all that sort of thing over the couple of years. So, you know, there's no leaking shocks, there's no seals gone. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that. The wheels and tyres, probably the thing that I like most about this car, they're quality Michelin tyres. They're a 215/50 R17. And I've done a couple of videos when we first bought the car that covers all the different things, so I'll put a link to those above so you can go and have a look at those. But yeah, look, brake pads are like new. With regen braking you don't use those. Nice and clean in there. There's been no leaking of brake pistons or any of that sort of stuff. These are a really good quality aluminium rim. They obviously don't have the aero type covers that the newer rims have, but yeah, really happy with that. Mud guards or mud spats, look at that, I've dirtied my finger. They were an optional accessory, so I bought those aftermarket and put those on. But yeah, all that sort of plastic protection strips under the doors. I really like this, particularly in Australia with rocks and things on gravel roads, so good protection under there. And this little one here, we put a couple of those on the doors so the kids don't open them and dent them. Little scuff mark there, but as you can see, that hasn't sort of gone right through the paint. So all in all, the side of the vehicle, thumbs up. So finally, before we move around the front, let's just have a bit of a look at the top of the car. So the ZS came standard with roof rails, so these are really handy. As I mentioned, we go camping quite a lot and they can carry 75 kilos, so very handy. Also, this model in the Essence had the full length sunroof, and look, I wasn't a fan of sunroofs. Historically they've leaked, etc. But after 3 years, this one, there's no leaks, there's no wind noise, these seals still look in as new condition. And the blind inside still works faultlessly. So yeah, the kids love that one. I wasn't a fan, but look, it's on there and it's been doing the job, so no complaints. And finally, just a little rain gutter here. So some cars don't have this these days, and it's a bit of a pain because the rain just all runs off the top straight down the side of your windows, but this one's got a nice little channel there, so it catches the rain and runs it down the back. So let's move around to the front of the car as the wind picks up, so I hope you guys aren't getting any wind noise. So this is another way you can tell the ZSEV. So it's got a semi-filled in grille at the front, and I should have also mentioned the wheels as well. They were specific to the electrics, those wheels. So this one here worried me a little bit. That pops up, which was a bit of a silly design. You've got your charge ports under there, so type 2 and your CCS2. But this worried me a little bit. There's a wire up in there, and you guys probably can't see it. I'll come around to the side. There it is on the other side. So yeah, there's a little cable in there. Again, you probably can't see it. There's a cable in there that as that goes up and down, I was worried that that would fatigue. But after 3 years and goodness knows how many charge sessions, that's still fine, so no problems. Other thing was this grille. I wasn't a big fan of this. It's closed in here but open there for the cooling radiators. I was really worried about all the bug spatter and all that sort of stuff, but it hasn't been too bad. It's not as bad as you would think. So a little brush just keeps that clean. Look, the headlights have been good, no problems with indicators, headlights. As I mentioned, there's been no moisture get in those, so no problems there. And none of this grille or flashing here has become loose. So yeah, all good. So let's have a look under this bonnet and see what we think after 3 years under here. So the first thing you'll notice is obviously there's no frunk or no storage space under here, so obviously knew that when we bought the car. But what I didn't notice was that there's a lot of dust under here, so you can see right down there to the roadway. So there's no covers underneath, and I'll show you underneath shortly. So what I've worked out is because there's no covers underneath, this actually gets a lot of dirt and dust. So I often just blow this out with the air compressor. Obviously hasn't affected the car at all. Everything under here has been fine, but it just does get covered in this road grime, which is annoying. 12-volt battery, had some reports that some of these were faulty and going, but we've had this now, no problems whatsoever, and it's still showing its full charge. No problems with any coolant leaks, anything there. So yeah, pretty much under the bonnet here has been all good. I guess just another thing to mention, these do have the old strut, so you don't have any hydraulic arms here. But look, the bonnet is sturdy, so if you push it sort of side to side there's no sort of movement. Don't get me wrong, these aren't heavy duty Land Cruiser sort of quality, but the quality is good enough. We haven't had any problems with windscreen wipers, washers. All this plastic here still looks reasonably good. Wiper blades are good. As I mentioned, headlights good. So yeah, really no issues with the front end or under the bonnet. So we'll just scoop down under here and I'll show you what I mean about no covers. So hopefully you can see that as we go up under the front here, there's a little bit of a sort of air dam there. Hopefully you can see. But once we get in there, that's the bottom of the gearbox. And you will notice a little bit of oil there. Now that doesn't drip, it's just a little bit of oil mist that comes out of the gearbox. But yeah, that's where all that dust and road grime goes. So I guess just to wrap up under the bonnet, what we found is, look, the servicing prices are reasonable on these vehicles, but part of that is because there's no frunk, there's no plastic covers to get off. When they service it, they can, as you can see, they can get to the brake fluid, they can get to the coolant reservoirs, they can top up the washer bottle there, they can get to the 12 volt. So that does make it a little bit cheaper on a labour rate for services. As I mentioned, there is a gearbox in there, so at some point there will need to be the gearbox oil changed. There's the gearbox down in there, so you might be able to see a little bit of that oil mist that sort of comes out of the breather, but I'm not too worried about that. So just to wrap up on the exterior of the MGZSEV with some general comments. So look, we've found parts to be reasonably cheap on the MGs compared to other brand of vehicles. So that's great if you do need any parts, nice and cheap there. We have had to get a couple of replacement parts and we'll cover those in the next video on the interior. But look, the insurance also is not bad. So we've got our current insurance renewal for the 2024 year, and it has gone up, but it's still only $830 for full comprehensive insurance, and that's up to an agreed value of $36,000, which is the top end of the low kilometre range for these cars in the used market. That's based on being garaged overnight in a secure garage and doing around 15,000 kilometres of travel a year. And if you're wondering which insurance company that is, it's Everyday Insurance by Woolworths, and I don't get any kickbacks or any marketing spend from those guys. That's just to let you know who we are with at the moment. However, we do shop around if we need to, but that's the deal for this next current year. Accessories for these cars are very easy to get because there's also petrol models, so that I think is an advantage, and we've found that good. You can get a spare wheel for these as well, so in our next video we'll show you inside the boot. But if you wanted a spare physical wheel for travelling in the outback, you can get those for this car. The battery degradation is average for this model car for the year and the kilometres. If you're a Patreon or Ko-fi supporter, we'll have a detailed video coming out in the next couple of months which will go through our actual degradation figures. So if you're not a supporter, I'd really appreciate it if you did join up. So that's it, our first of 3 videos covering our 3-year ownership point of the MGZSEV. Thanks very much for watching. I really appreciate your support. If you like the video, please give it the thumbs up. Share it with your mates because views and subscriptions really help the channel grow. And as I mentioned, if you can help with a couple of dollars, please visit those supporter links you'll see in the show notes. And if you're in the market for any of the products or services that our new sponsors provide, please also visit their links in the show notes. Well, that's it for another video. Thanks very much for watching. Take care, stay safe, look after your friends and family, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.